Hi you guys, welcome, välkomna, добро пожаловать. It's Friday and it's another true crime stories with Sa. Hope you guys are doing great. Hope everyone that was celebrating Thanksgiving had a great Thanksgiving with family and loved ones. And for those that didn't celebrate, hope you guys had a great weekend. We have a lot to cover today, so get ready. As you guys can probably already read by the title, today is probably one of the most gruesomest case that I ever have come about, and probably one of the gruesomest I ever covered on my channel. Definitely mature audience only, and just a quick disclaimer and warning. Today we will be talking about skinning a human being. It's very graphic details. So if this is something that you don't want to hear and you think it's scary or something you can't, deal with right now, totally understand. Your well-being is most important to me. So I'm going to cover other cases in next Friday, so you're welcome then. And as always, due to privacy and respect for the victim and victim's loved ones, I will be changing the name of the victim and everyone involved. But you guys can always Google the case later. I will be giving out dates. I will be giving out the location, so it's very easily to just Google. Before we dive into today's case, just real quick, I kind of changed my background a little bit. As you guys can see, this looks so pretty at night though. I'm actually looking for a custom-made neon light to kind of have like a true crime stories with Sal or what have you. So if you or someone that you know do customize neon LED lights, please leave a comment down below so I can check them out. Okay, you guys, so without further ado, let's dive into today's gruesome case. If you are familiar with the movie Silence of the Lambs that came out, I believe, 1991, or Ed Gein, you probably can figure out where I'm going with this case. If you don't know about Ed Gein or Silence of the Lambs, I highly suggest that you guys watch the movie and do some research about Ed Gein, because he was definitely an interesting character, to say the least. Today's case starts 1999 in Poland. A tugboat was coming back from his usual route into the dock to settle in for the night. And as soon as they reached the dock, the propeller of the tugboat, they felt like a little jerk. Something was caught in the propeller, and this was definitely not unusual. This was something that happened before, like seaweed or maybe some trash that people throw in the river, that happens. It gets stuck in the propeller. So this was nothing alarming. And the owner of the tugboat figured, it's late, it's cold, I don't have time to, investigate what is stuck underneath there. It's going to take me a while. I just want to go home and sleep. I had a long day. And that's exactly what he did. He just, parked his, do you say parked boat? Yeah, I get so. Yeah, he parked his boat. I'm like, parked? Yeah. Anyways, he parked his boat and went home, settle in for tonight. In the early morning, he came back and he went down to where the propeller is and started to investigate of what it was that was stuck previous night. And as soon as he went down there, a foul smell, like a putrid, disgusting smell, just hit him right in the face. He came across a white, pale, kind of like a bag looking like a thing. He couldn't really understand what it was. Was he looking at a plastic bag but it didn't have the consistency of a plastic bag, but it was very thin. So as he kind of like looking around, trying to figure out what is this thing and what is so stinky about it, he noticed a human ear. And immediately when he sees that human ear, it just hits him like a brick in his face. And he's like, oh my God, this is human skin. He immediately calls the police, and a swarm of police just, comes right away. They seal off the whole boat, they tape off the area, and they proceed to look thoroughly through everything. They even actually called a diving team to send some divers into the water to see if they could find any other pieces of this human skin. It took the divers and the police it took them a week to locate partially the rest of the body. They found a human leg, or pieces of a human leg. They found pieces of the skin of a human glute or buttocks, human butt, and a few pieces of clothing items. With those new discovered pieces, they could determine that the body belonged to a 23-year-old female who I will call Masha. Before we dive into the case of Masha, I just want to point out that that's the only part of her that they found. They never recovered the rest of her body parts, never the head. So this was the only thing that was left of poor Masha. So who was this 23-year-old Masha? Well, police quickly found out that she was a university student, that she was studying religion. According to Masha's mother, Masha and her father were very, very close. They were like best friends. And 3 years prior, her and her father went on a hike. And this is something that they do regularly, or did regularly. But unfortunately, on this fateful day, her father tripped on a rock, and it was kind of like a slippery road. So he tripped and he hit his back and injured his spinal cord. And from that day, he suffered tremendously, and eventually, a few months later of that injury, he passed away. And for this, Masha she just went, she was just devastated. Masha's father's death affected her big time. She was heartbroken, to say the least. She basically became isolated. She isolated herself from people. She just took the blame for his death. She blamed herself. And she became deeply, deeply depressed. Masha's mother, watching her daughters, just deteriorating, she decided to have Masha go to a therapist once a week to talk everything out, to kind of like maybe help her, to guide her in a better path. This seemed to help. Masha was regularly visiting her therapist. She made sure she never missed a session, start to kind of like, again, have contact with her friends and be somewhat social. But still, you could see that her father's death definitely changed her whole personality. The new investigation team, they came to find out that Masha's mother actually reported Masha missing a year before her discovery. So her body was discovered in 1999, and Masha went missing on November 12th, 1998. But unfortunately, since Masha was a 23-year-old grown woman, the police didn't really take Masha's mother's concern too alarming. They figured that, she maybe just, needed some break, time off from everyone, since, again, her state, how she was, and the police didn't see anything like alarming with her disappearance. So they kind of brushed it off and told the mother that, she will come back whenever she feels like. Of course, as a mother, I'm sure I'm not a mother yet, but I'm sure as a mother, your child, even though they're 23 or 43 or 63, your, mother's intuition knows, So she basically contacted a private investigator. And through that private investigator, he did some more digging and interviewing Masha's university student friends, and came to find out that 3 weeks prior to her disappearance in November, Masha didn't show up for her classes. She was actually absent for 3 weeks. And this was, again, very, very unlike her. She was a very punctual woman, even though she was depressed and, was going through all of these emotions, because she took her education very seriously. Another thing that a few of her student friends noticed, that she started to kind of like lose weight. She also dyed her hair blonde. She had like dark brown, blackish hair, and then all of a sudden she dyed it blonde, or like blonder highlights. So the police, so the investigator, private detective, he thought that this could maybe was signs pointing to that she had like a love interest. Like usually if you meet someone, you kind of like start to change your appearance to be more attracted to the other person. Also maybe the absence, the not going to class, maybe you skipped some classes just to be with your new love interest. But if Masha had a new boyfriend or a love interest, people would not know the details about it because she was a very private person. And on the day of November 12th, 1998, was the day when Masha's mother reported her missing. It was actually an appointment that Masha missed with her shrink. And that appointment, her mother was supposed to join her. So now fast forward and back to the timeline when the police, the new investigating team and the police discovered Masha's remains in the river, and they have contacted the mother, have told her. So basically the mother, after Masha's disappearance in November of 98 and her discovered remains in January 99, so Masha's mother were clueless of where Masha were those whole almost 2 months. This was a very gruesome case, and probably the first case that police had to deal with someone being skinned, and that the remains that they found is partially just the skin and a few pieces of the body. They didn't have a lot to go on. So, but it looked like it was a breakthrough in the case a few months after they found Masha's remain. An elderly man just called the police one morning and told him that he suspects that his son, who is in his, I believe, 50s, and that lives with him, is dead. And he suspects that his grandson, who is in his 20s, that also lived with the dad and the grandpa, is the killer. And right away, the police send out their team. They come knocking on the door, and the grandpa, the man that called the police, opens the door, and he leads the police down to the basement. Once the police enter the basement, they just can't believe what they're seeing. They see this body without a head, hanging upside down from a wall. And the police are just stunned, and they don't know what to do. And then the grandpa leads them up to the second floor of the house where the grandson is living. And once the police start walking up the stairs, they could hear loud music, Russian music, and loud singing in Russian. And as soon as the police opened the door to the room where the music and the commotion was coming from, they see this young man, to believe in his 20s, dancing to Russian music, singing in Russian, and he seems to be wearing a very ugly looking Halloween mask and just dancing around like a maniac. When the police announced themselves, he stopped dancing and he turned around, faced the police, and they see that the mask that he was wearing was not a Halloween mask at all. It was actually the skinned face of his own father. So basically, the body downstairs was belonging to this 50-year-old man who is this dancing man's father. So he decapitated his own father and then skinned his head and wore the mask. And the grandson knew that his grandfather was partially blind. So this whole day, the grandson was wearing his own father's face as a mask, pretending to be his father, until eventually the grandfather discovered his son's remains in the basement. Due to the severity and the similarity of this case, the police quickly felt like this could be their guy. Not only did this man kill and skinned his own father, he was probably the perpetrator in Masha's case. It also turned out that the 20-year-old man did attend the same university as Masha, but unfortunately no other leads other than that they attended the same university together. No other leads or evidence could connect this 20-year-old man to Masha's case. So police quickly dropped him as their suspect. And upon asking the grandson why he killed his own father, the 20-year-old man, the grandson, told the police that he was furious at his father because he left their mother all by herself back in Russia. So now the police is at a standstill with Masha's case. They have no further leads or evidence or people suspect. That is until a second man came on police's radar, and this man was actually accused of assaulting a woman. And he was also known for stalking and harassing women around the river area, the same river as Masha's remains were found. But eventually, same thing as the first suspect, this second suspect didn't have enough, the police didn't have enough evidence on him, and he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. The only other thing the police could think of is to get in contact with the FBI. So the Polish police contacts the FBI and help them to kind of like establish a profile of the killer. And so the FBI did. So they profiled this killer to be approximately in his 20s, between his 20s and 30s, a loner, a mentally ill person with sadistic tendencies, also a man who actually wished to be a woman or desired to dress in women's clothing. They also believe that this individual either worked within this field or working in the field of a surgeon, a butcher, or veterinarian, or a tailor, because the skinning of Masha's body was very neatly and precisely done. It only can be done like that by someone that is very, very familiar with dissecting or skinning animals or people, unfortunately. At this point, Masha's autopsy report was finally done and concluded, and the final report states that prior to Masha being skinned, she was abused and severely, severely tortured. They found numerous of laceration, bruises, and marks on Masha's remains, and also the marks was the pathologist said that the marks were made by an instrument that you would use for martial arts. And I'm going to insert the picture of the instrument that I'm talking about, because I don't know, I can't remember the name of it, like handles. Okay. I don't know, but picture here. So yeah, so that's the instrument that believed been used to torture Masha. I would also insert picture here of the model of the skin suit. So the parts of Masha's body that was skinned. This is just a model. This is just a drawing, so it's not an actual skin of her picture of her skin. So here you go. So as you guys can see, her skin was neatly cut from the lower region of her, starting the lower region of her body, and kind of cut the whole torso. Another thing also that the pathologist saw in the report, in the autopsy, is that Masha's nipples were missing. So the nipples were cut off, but the skin of the breast was still attached. And so, as you guys can see, it's kind of like a human vest, basically. That's the indication that I get, that this individual basically cut her upper torso up to her shoulders and neck to kind of do this human vest, which is just sick, beyond sick. Like, yeah. People cease to amaze me every day. Stories that I research and hear about, and just people I come across, it's like you think you know or heard everything until you hear this, and you're like, oh my god, okay, this one takes the cake. But sadly, after all of this, Masha's case would be at a standstill for nearly 19 years. Okay, so 19 agonizing, painful years for Masha's mother to be living without knowing what really happened to her daughter, until May of 2017. So very recently. So 2017, in May, this man, this 52-year-old man, gets arrested. And this time the police has actually very, very concrete evidence against this man. He is most likely the perpetrator. So you see, a local Polish woman calls the police one day in 2017, and she wants to file a report against her ex-coworker. They worked at a morgue together, and this coworker of hers had been giving her some like weird vibes. He was very, very much obsessed, and still obsessed with the Masha's case. So she felt like this was a good note to the police, that maybe you guys should look into this man. During this time period, Masha's mother also noticed that her daughter's grave have been visited, and as far as she knows, they don't have any like close relatives that live close by to be visiting Masha's grave that often. And Masha doesn't have that many close friends either, so it's mostly her mother that visits her grave. And every time Masha's mother would visit the grave, it would be a little small candle always lit by the gravestone. So of course this is very concerning for Masha's mother, and she decides to tell police this information. So police install some surveillance cameras around Masha's grave to see like who is this person that is visiting her grave. And there it is on camera. This middle-aged man comes every night, sits by Masha's grave. Sometimes he reads to the gravestone. Sometimes he just sits there in the dark, quiet. And this visit's been going on every day for weeks. Upon interviewing the gravestone workers, or the graveyard workers, the police also come to find out that the graveyard workers point out this guy too. They thought that this was some relative of Masha, because this guy has been coming there very often and visiting the grave. So who is this 52-year-old man? Well, he's a Polish resident. He served in military briefly, and he also worked at the morgue where he was helping skinning corpses together with his coworker, one of the coworker that called and reported him to the police of his suspicious behavior. He also was working at a zoologist university where he would be dissecting animals. And he actually got fired from that university because he was caught. He killed all of the rabbits. He was also known as a loner and a weirdo. He would just walk the streets in Poland and stalk and harass women on occasions. He also sometimes got caught dressing as a female. And he was actually very frequently visiting this local gym. This local gym had classes, and they were teaching martial arts. So all of these pieces now is falling together. Every single piece of the puzzle is pointing directly to this 52-year-old man. But although this man would deny anything to do with Masha's killing, in fact, he states that he never knew of Masha, never met her, and he's definitely not their guy. But upon searching his apartment, the police came across a diary that was literally probably the cherry on top, like the final piece of evidence that, make them 100% sure that they had the right guy. Because you see, in that diary, it was a very detailed description of Masha and the way he met Masha, what they did, and what he did to her. So according to this man's diary, he started stalking Masha. He saw her in town and started kind of following her everyday movement to see where she'd gone. And since Masha was very much a loner, she was, doing everything by herself. She never had like friends or anyone go walking with her. And he also noticed that she used to visit the local cinema. And so he kind of like struck up a conversation, and that's how they became familiar of each other. And he showed some sort of interest in her. And since this is probably like the first time a man talking to Masha, she probably felt very flattered, what have you. And that's, if you guys remember in the beginning what I said, she started to kind of like her college friends started noticing her changing her behavior, like losing weight, coloring her hair blonder. And according to this man's diary, he preferred blonde women. And then in another part of the diary, he basically states or writes that on November 12th to 1998, so November 12th, 1998, that day that Masha was last seen alive, and the day that Masha's mother reported her missing after failing to show up at her therapist office, he lured Masha out to this abandoned cabin that he owned in the middle of like a rural area, middle of nowhere kind of. And this was a Wednesday, November 12th was a Wednesday, so everyone was kind of like working, no one, if it was houses around, usually people visited those houses during the weekend, so the weekdays they had their apartments in the city where they worked, so it was like basically no one out in wherever that cabin was located at. So, and that's where he basically tortured and skinned Masha. And according to the police, Masha was basically held captive there for approximately 2 months before she died. And I don't think I mentioned that, but her cause of death was blood loss. A few sources where I was reading speculate that the killer, the perpetrator, the 52-year-old man, actually skinned Masha alive, that she was very well aware of what was happening to her. But it's not 100% sure, and it's not 100% not sure. So I'm just leaving at that. So her cause of death is blood loss. So it could be very well that he started skinning her and she was still alive, but because the amount of blood lost, she passed away in the middle of the procedure. After skinning Masha, then the 52-year-old perpetrator, he tried to put on her skin basically on him, kind of like a suit, but unfortunately it was not fitting him at all, so he kind of kept it as a souvenir for 2 to 3 weeks before getting rid of it, tossing it into the river, basically. And as far as my research, this man is still in custody. He's still in jail. So he was apprehended, arrested in 2017. He is still in custody, and they haven't had a trial for him yet. And why that is, I have no idea. Is it because of the COVID pandemic? Maybe, I'm sure, kind of, sort of has something to do with it. But also, yeah, I don't know why he's still in custody and not been prosecuted and put in jail for life. My heart goes out to Masha and Masha's loved one, Masha's mother. I don't know. I don't think Masha had any siblings. They were not. If she did, they were not mentioned in the research that I found. But her mother, not only losing her husband in a terrible hiking accident, and now her daughter in this vicious, cruel murder. It's just unbearable. Like, she's very, very, very strong, and my heart goes out to her mother. I fully understand and have a compassion for people with, mental disorder or mental health issues, battling depression or identity crisis. But to skin someone, dead or alive, doesn't matter, just to skin a human being, to wear their flesh on your body like a suit, for me, it's just, I mean, I don't know. I don't even, yeah. I don't even know what type of animals raised you. Like, where do you come from? What kind of dark wooded forest are you, like, have you lived in? Like, I don't even know. But hey, people like that exist, and probably this man is not the first and nor the last one. Well, you guys, that was it for today's horrible and gruesome and scary case. I hope I didn't scare you guys. Very interested to see what you guys think of this story. If you about to leave some comments, remember, a reminder, always stay nice in the comment section. You never know who's reading, who's watching the video. Could be someone of the victim's loved ones. So just imagine if that was your loved one and someone wrote some bullshit, how you would feel. So just think twice. And this is my 10th episode. Wow, we're already on 10. I started on October 1st, and we are on December 3rd today, right? I think. No, 2nd. Or is it 3rd? Anyways, stay safe, love yourself, take care of yourself, and I see you guys next Friday. Ciao, cacao!